Welcome to the 22nd episode of Let's Talk About Electric Vehicles. My name is Teresa, I'm an economist, and I try to answer general questions about electrified transportation systems. For today's episode, I actually got some help. I have been looking for a partner and co-host for a while now, so welcome Theo. Thank you for joining me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi Teresa. Thanks for having me on. So a little bit about my background. I've been in the software business for many years, mainly working as a programmer. But I love learning about and discussing technology of all kinds, especially clean tech and electric vehicles. And of course, I'm an avid listener to your podcast, so I'm super happy to be here to help with this episode.
Yay, great. So before we start diving into today's topic, I want to thank everyone who shared their experiences and opinions about EV identity with me after last week's episode. There is one comment that I found particularly interesting made by Ned from the Western United States. He brought up the idea that the EV owner identity is influenced by the public attitude towards the government and by the degree of trust in the authorities. So, for example, in Norway, the people seem to generally have more trust in experts and in the government, and therefore, people have more positive associations with electric vehicle subsidies. And people who are buying electric vehicles are perceived as conscientious and responsible consumers. Whereas in China, buying an electric vehicle as a reaction to governmental subsidies may happen due to a sense of obedience rather than a sense of consciousness. In that case, EV owners would be perceived as obedient consumers. So very interesting comparison. Thank you for bringing it up, Nat. And before I forget, Let's Talk About Electric Vehicles is only one of many great podcasts about electric cars. I personally listen to several different ones on a regular basis. Maybe I will do a question and answer on my Patreon where I will discuss my personal favorite podcasts. So let me know if this is something that interests you. But anyways, if you're looking for great podcasts about electric vehicles, there's a recent blog post that lists a few electric vehicle podcasts. I will link it down below in case you're interested. So, Theo, you did some research about EV conversions, and I can't wait to hear all about it. I keep forgetting that the electrification of transportation systems does not only apply to electric vehicles, but there are other means of transportation that employ a combustion engine, like boats, motorcycles, planes, and so on. But nevertheless, we are going to focus on cars today, right?
Yes, it seems as if anything with a propulsion system that involves rotation can be converted to electric and battery electric power. So bicycles, motorcycles, scooters, planes, trains, boats, submarines, cars, etc. Unfortunately, no electric rockets. But my research is focused on cars because they're undergoing big changes these days and are very frequently converted. By the way, much of the historical EV conversion info I've been able to find is US-centric, but there are certainly converters all around the world making it happen.
So, and within the car conversions, are there any different types that are worth noting?
Yeah, the most common conversions, and the ones that we'll talk most about today, start with a gas, or also known as internal combustion engine car, and convert to entirely electric, with the energy being supplied by batteries. But you could also do a conversion from gas to hybrid, where you have both gas and electric working together, or you could take a normal hybrid where you have gas and electric working together, but can't plug it into the wall, and you could make it a plug-in hybrid where you can charge it up from the wall socket. Or you could potentially do a conversion where you use electric propulsion but store the energy not in batteries but in some other way. Like, for example, hydrogen fuel cell is still an electric car being powered by hydrogen fuel cell.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for explaining this to us. So tell me, who are the people that do such conversions?
So mostly when we think about conversions, or at least when I think about conversions, I think about someone converting a used car in their garage kind of as a project. But there are also commercial shops that do conversions, and there have been mass-produced conversions on a reasonably large scale, where a car manufacturer or a third party takes a new car without the engine, which they call, in the industry, they call it a glider. So they take that glider and they power it using an electric motor and batteries. So for example, Ford did this with the Ranger pickup in the early 2000s, where they released a Ranger EV that was basically a Ranger pickup that had never had an engine in it, but otherwise was still a arranger.
I think people tried to convert vehicles into electric cars from the early stages on, right? Recall from the Let's Talk About Electric Vehicles episode about the history of EVs that people tried all sorts of technologies in order to replace horses as the main means of transportation. So I guess putting an electric motor in a horse carriage counts as the very first EV conversion. So what else do you know about the historic development of EV conversions?
Well, I totally agree that the first conversion was probably a carriage going from horsepower to electric power. The first example is usually attributed to Robert Anderson in Scotland. He built an electric carriage. Interestingly, at that point, it was powered by non-rechargeable batteries, which is kind of crazy. Like imagine putting like 100 pounds of Duracells in your electric carriage. But battery technology, battery technology held electric cars back quite a bit at first.
It's always the batteries, right? So as far as I know, there was a big boom of electric vehicles from 1890 through 1920. So about a third of all cars at that time were electric.
That's right. Around 1912 was the peak for electric car production during that period. And like kind of moving back to the conversion thing, I'm sure there were conversions during that period, but they're hard to find records for because conversions are so often just someone in their garage, learning. And there are records, however, of research and development in electric vehicles that effectively had to build conversions. For example, there are pictures of a Ford from early on that was built electric as a test chassis and was tested. Although, as you know, Ford ended up going gas-powered.
Yeah, and we both know what happened with the US market for electric vehicles after the Model T arrived.
Yeah, gas power really took over around the same time the Model T arrived in the early 1900s. And kind of the common conception is that it was due to a combination of cost because the Model T was amazingly cheap, and partly due to range limitations of electrics and the lack of electricity in rural areas. I'm sure that the Great Depression and World War II had a continued damping effect on everyone.
And then at some point, the DIY conversions were back in trend, right? So can we say anything about when DIY conversions became popular again?
Yeah, roughly 1970. From the 1920s until the 1970s, there must have been some conversions happening, but it's hard to find any evidence. But in the 1970s, with two major oil crises and very high gas prices, conversions and electric cars in general became much more popular. People used repurposed parts, such as those from golf carts and forklifts, along with regular old lead-acid car batteries to convert their cars and save money on gas. This interest stayed around through the 80s and into the 90s, and technology available to hobbyists improved over that time. This included more powerful and efficient motors and electrical systems, and better lead-acid batteries, especially the sealed lead-acid varieties like AGM or gel cell, which gave faster charging and more power.
You know why I'm laughing? I just realized that is it rightly pronounced lead acid batteries,
Yeah,
and not lead acid batteries? Oh my god!
okay.
Why didn't anyone tell me?
I don't know.
I used it so often. Okay. Well, anyways, regardless of how to pronounce it, it seems like the battery is always the bad guy. Even until today, the battery is the main reason why electric vehicles are still so expensive to produce. So unfortunately, this common battery problem oftentimes distracts from the fact that electric motors have more power than internal combustion engines.
Yeah, that's right. Batteries have held things back, and batteries kind of lead you to focus on range because the overall capacity of batteries is less. But in terms of how quickly you can get kind of acceleration onto the road, batteries are actually much better than a gas engine.
I mean, electric motors, not batteries.
Sorry. Yeah. Right. Batteries combined with electric motors can put out a lot more power than a gas engine, and that actually led to in the mid to late 1990s, conversions started to focus more on performance and specifically on acceleration, with electric cars actually starting to beat gas-powered cars at the drag strips, leading to the creation of the National Electric Drag Racing Association in 1996. And so some of those drag racers were built from the ground up, but most were and are converted gas-powered cars, where they've replaced the gas engine with a big motor and battery. And
That sounds like so much fun.
yeah, super fun.
Electric drag racing?
Yep.
So I guess the performance of electric motors was actually also the main inspiration for Tesla.
Yeah, it really it's clear that that is where Tesla started and that it was very intentional. Like Tesla's first car was the Roadster, and they set out to prove that electric could be better and more performant than gas. And it's quite possible that the guys who started Tesla, got some of that idea from watching electric drag racing. So one of the founders of Tesla Motors, J.B. Straubel, converted a Porsche to electric in the early 2000s and brought it to meetups with other electric like performance enthusiasts and drag racers. And Alan Coccioni, we'll get there. See, I understand what it's like to not be able to pronounce things.
Yeah, especially names. That's always so embarrassing. But I feel like it's a running gag, though.
Yeah.
my favorite is that after I think the recycling episode, my boyfriend told me, "Oh well, you mispronounced aluminum." He told me this after the episode was published. I was like, "Well, great."
What did you say? Aluminium?
Aluminium, yeah. So I don't know.
That just makes you sound British.
A German
it's okay.
version. Yeah.
So back to the episode.
Mm-hmm.
And Alan Coccioni, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who was involved in creating the T0, which was a hand-built electric performance car that almost certainly helped inspire the Tesla Roadster. He was also seen at electric drag events, so you can see these guys getting inspired by seeing that the performance of electric dragsters. There was actually an article in Wired magazine in 1999, 4 years before Tesla was founded, in which a prominent EV converter and drag racer said that he thought the way to make EVs popular was to make them cool by making them fast, which is totally like the Tesla way.
That sounds like a good plan. Today we know that it worked, at least for Tesla.
Yeah, for sure. Interestingly, this idea was already 100 years old when that Wired magazine article came out. There was a guy named, again with the pronunciation, Camille Janazzi, who built an electric race car in 1899, partly to promote his electric carriage company within the Parisian electric carriage market. He called the thing le Jamais Contente, which I think means the never satisfied. So it's clear that this idea has been around for a long time.
Yeah, EV conversions have been popular amongst car racers in the 90s because of the great performance of the electric motor. So what happened next?
So since then, it seems like electric conversions have followed closely with kind of the trend of production electric cars and becoming less expensive, more refined, and having a longer range. At least the value for money has gotten better. Price drops in lithium-ion batteries and the price drops in AC motors and in all the electronics in general have made conversions better than ever before.
So I must say, in my electric vehicle enthusiast bubble, I know quite a few people who are interested in EV conversion as a hobby. But I wonder how popular this topic is in general. Do we know anything about the global interest or the total number of EV conversions so far?
I haven't been able to find a count globally or even within the US where I live. But today there are certainly thousands of converted electric cars on the road. There's one website, evalbum.com, which has pictures and info for over 4,500 electric cars from around the world, most of which are conversions.
And what can we expect from the future?
The focus on conversions seems to be shifting, with more and more conversions happening on classic cars and more conversions being done by commercial conversion shops. This makes sense, as the average person who wants an electric car can just go out and buy an OEM one from a regular car manufacturer, and it'll be quite good. If you're getting a car converted, it's more because you want that specific car to be electric, like because it's a classic car or one that has a lot of meaning to you personally.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So thank you for introducing me and the listeners to the history of EV conversions. So now I'm really eager to know about the pros and cons and the difficulties of EV conversion.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that topic as well. And luckily, we're going to cover that in the next episode, along with more about the cost and the technology that's used to do the conversions.
That sounds great. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
have reached the end of this episode. I hope that we could teach you something new today. Thanks again for joining me, Theo.
It was my pleasure. Thanks.
So you will find all the references and contact information in the show notes. Also, I would like to thank my patrons for their support. For more information about how to support this podcast, follow the link to my Patreon account in the show notes. Also, please don't hesitate to reach out to me for feedback or topic suggestions. I'm excited to hear more about the EV conversions again next week. So have a wonderful day and bye!
Bye!